besede niso dovolj, akcije so potrebne, kaj ne?
Words are not enough. We need action. And action is what we will listen about to Boštjan Videmšek, the ambassador of the European Climate Pact. He is a long-term journalist, reporter from crisis areas, and in recent years he started focusing on renewable energy sources and alleviation of climate change. He is traveling globally to learn about the well-functioning good examples. Boštjan, hello. We are looking forward to your thoughts about what we've discussed today, how adult education can impact the green transformation of society. Hello, everyone. I hope that after this long morning you do have some attention. Zoom is not the best platform to hang out together when you talk about going from words to action. What Chris has said and what Mateja has mentioned is so inspirational that I created new examples for my future research. But since we are wrapping up, let me simply start with a brief introduction. Since for 25 years I've been reporting from war zones. And since the majority of these wars, those that started after 2001, after 9/11, are still ongoing, there are eternal wars, so-called. Personally and professionally, I got frustrated, traumatized, helpless, because working locally, regionally, and globally in case of war zone reporting became not irrelevant, but without a tangible impact and effects, that you need to be mildly crazy to do the reporting from war zones. You need a lack of fear, and everything disappeared with my age. So after 2013, after Middle Eastern war and after Darfur, I noticed there's something new going on. New is not the best term, but still, conflicts are driven by something else. These are no longer classic wars between the two countries. They are becoming asymmetrical in case of migration as well. And one of the main drivers are climate change and radical consequences in spaces that I reported from. And here and now, the majority of conflicts, armed conflicts, are happening in arid, dry, hot spaces. This is in reverse. This is Sahara, North Africa, Middle East. These are the conflict area, and since I could not change anything with my reporting from these endless wars, with my photographer Matjaž Krivic, 5 years ago we decided to change the course of our work. The majority of wars, we recorded what was going on, and we started on the path of constructive journalism that no longer records the consequences, but interprets and based on experience and the presence on the field and self-reflection, focuses not only to educate the public but also to political players, decision makers, offer some solutions, some manuals with guidelines In time of dispersed attention, in time where we live in the dictatorship of asocial media, where our work, a large part of social sciences are becoming obsolete, based on total idiotism, it's difficult to be competitive. And despite of the opened option for public discourse, it's still very difficult to be efficient. And for more experienced, engaged people who have excess energy and ideals, I truly believe that we need an imperative not only to ask questions, just describing the consequences, but we should offer answers and solutions. And in the light of everything mentioned, Matjaž and I journeyed the world, focused on Plan B. This is not only a book, but an open project that we continue. And we started to look for well-functioning, not science fiction examples, but well-functioning examples, good practices, how we can face climate crisis, that we see as the key front line, not only for humanity, but something that carries the core of conflicts, core of everything that we are. And that is why we tackle it with similar methods as we dealt with war stories, based on presence in the field, looking for cause and effect, and looking for an algorithm for common denominators. And after everything I've heard today, I want to bring together those most important thoughts, but very rarely detected thoughts when we discuss climate change, crisis, and combat with climate change. The best examples, the best cases, it's the result of our research, but might be different. But best results in fighting climate change can be found where consequences are extremely strong, where people had no choice, but they had to face the climate change, not wait for authorities, not wait for invisible hand of the market or the industry, but people had to make their own solutions. And this I understand in the context of the opinion of Daniel Kahneman, great US psychologist, who said that climate change should be faced in the sense that a person, humanity, is not evolutionary equipped to face the combat that is not imminent, that is not present. And environments, Middle Europe is not facing huge temperatures, high waters, so we respond slowly, too slow. And when you have final threat, ultimative threat, not abstract, but facing you, like the truck that you that is running towards you. So it's very, very difficult to respond in case of non-imminent threat. Climate crisis as such, we should not respond with reflex response, but we should be seriously responding. This is the imminent threat and facing the imminent threat. Secondly, according to our journey, our results, Second common denominator are well-functioning communities. Some well-functioning social tissue without strongly established hierarchies, where with more or less consensus they could reach rapid solutions, where there is not a lot of bureaucracies, where there is not ultimative power of lawyers, of the law. And the third common denominator is the necessity, the emergency, and some business talents applying for tenders without any shame. There is a lot of money for green projects, available funding for green projects. And we will still have to pay the debt, but now this is a historical opportunity for funding that we should not neglect. In US, there is a momentum, strong momentum, and you should use it for just right causes to promote green transition. There is a lot of opportunities that people who are fighting for status quo can get this funding. Fourth common denominator, fourth line, is that without some natural leaders, without some driving force in the community, nothing can happen. In every story of success, in the first 11 chapters of our book, we found people who, on behalf of the community, on behalf of the whole class, were willing to step forward and not think just about themselves as a consequence. And using this personal leadership in all the examples that we found and mentioned, the clearest example and the closest example emotionally and geographically closest is the example of the first self-sufficient island in Mediterranean island, Telos. In spring 2019, they became self-sufficient, energy self-sufficient, depending on solar power. And when I mentioned before the funding available outside and how Spanish finances can be hijacked, the technology can be hijacked as well. So that we cannot stop but alleviate climate emergency, climate change, the stream of change. If we only have technology out there, this is an empty shell that can be filled by anyone, and technology hijacked by technocrats can change into different kind of weapon without any social role. And Telos is the example, like some other good practice example, but the Telos is a case study of the decade, where first the change happened in paradigm, in the thinking, in the cultural thinking. This island was in 1970 was a demographic social catastrophe. The fascist authorities were in charge, and Dr. Tassos Aliperis, after the fall of this government, could return, the doctor could return to the island and was invited to help a new President Papandreou and he was asked where he wants to serve. And doctor decided, send me somewhere no one else wants to go, as a last choice, as the last place anyone wants to go. And Tassos went to Telos, and the rest is history. He came to the island where old people lived in majority as a doctor. With surgical precision, he started planning the development at the end of 1970s. He started developing new paradigm, new values. And after renovation of antique roads, after they've introduced the first same-sex marriage, and when the island decided to be an exclusive tourist destination for quiet, limited groups of tourists, when the island decided to be self-sufficient in food as well, things started changing. Young people started coming back, and the island became recognized, and energy needs started to grow. They had underwater power lines, and they were running on coal and diesel, on thermal power plant. So why you would need a thermal power plant on Mediterranean island? It is a horrible, a horrific paradox why you would build something like that. So, due to energy needs, a classic opportunistic approach was to start thinking about energy self-sufficiency, to find not sufficient but excess renewable energy sources. So, by the accident, I truly believe it was no accident. It corresponded to my first visit to the island in 2017. It was after the peak of the so-called crisis, where migrant crisis, where the European Union never before experienced the refugee crisis, but Telos operated at that time as self-sufficient, distant from the grid, from the existent pathways, and people who were brought to the island from Greece on their refugee boats. Telos was never on the map of refugees. Those who crashed on the island, people were in worse conditions than other refugees. And on Telos, these migrants were received not as a threat, but as humans, not as an enemy army like the rest of the European Union, expressing their racist, chauvinist undertone. These people, after a few days on the island, were employed, finding their work in tourism. Children were introduced to the schools. They found Arab teachers between refugees, and there were one word echoing around the island was dignity. And this is the solution for every key problem. So for years I've been dealing with the conflict from war zones, with migrant and refugee stories as well. So in Telos I went to see what is the example of positive practice. And when I was writing this story with Matjaž, we were looking for good practices of facing climate change. So we started developing the story of the first self-sufficient island. What I want to mention here is that we already had the new social paradigm, the readiness for change, the community, individuals who have followed with the story, with their own contribution to the story. And on the other side, we had business talent and technology that, with the help of German scientists, with the European funding and Greek institutes, they introduce their green sustainable energy approach. Today, Telos is even more successful. In spring next year, it will become the first Mediterranean island with zero waste policy, no waste bin. So, since this is a very small island, they have no special features, unimaginable features, no thermal energy like Iceland, but high tides, extremely high tides that are important for the production of the energy of the future, tidal energy. And Telos is here an applicable example. They practically have everything without exception. And in its applicability became recognized, receiving awards for their energy project. This is no science fiction, and perhaps I am repeating myself by describing their innovativeness, but it is truly important that in the alienation of the public, in the monochromatic attention of our last year, we should shift our attention from anxiety and closed public, from anemic and less sensitive for what is going on in the world. We have to develop we have developed our aversion, intense aversion for different and for the other, where for the first time in the history we see ourselves as the center of the world within this corona crisis. The question of climate change is even more difficult to communicate in public, to raise the awareness and engagement of the public. And so here and now we have to offer the response to catastrophic scenarios. I'm not talking that we need to hold back or lie, but we have to present it here and now. Without specific solutions here and now that are offered to politicians, businessmen, business leaders, and wider society, wider audience, wider public, there is no breakthrough. So here I want to mention Michael Mann and his last book, Climate Wars. This is not a literal title of the book, where Mann emphasizes what I try to emphasize myself all the time. At the presentation of the book, oftentimes I get the question that makes me quite nervous, that happened in wars as well. What can I, as a citizen, do? As a person, what can I do?
So when I say it out loud, it makes me angry. Here, I'm not here to take care of the movements of individuals, but this is a catch, a big catch, a dangerous catch. If the attention, I'm talking about the context of my man, if the attention or the weight about tackling climate change is actually passes on to individuals, such as, for example, in tobacco wars and soft drinks. Any individual, whoever he or she is, finds themselves in a major crisis, and it's too much to be able to sustain that, and then the potential of an active citizen is lost, and people become passive citizens. And what is the consequence of that is the concern of climate emergency. And those emitting or producing emissions continue to do their activity, and without a change in consumer habits, we will not be able to pay ourselves out for the climate sins. So climate emergency has no limits. It doesn't know the families. It is so dangerous that only the whole community can fight it. The easiest way is to use the existing model to fight climate crisis. It has, of course, its negative sentiments and to describe tragedies through them. But this war, this conflict, this key civilization fight or battle is so serious that we, of course, can't seek any alliance in them. Thank you, Mr. Videmšek. In this way, we have actually summarized what we initially said, that we don't need only the transformation of individuals, but the transformation of the society, and this transformation is urgent. So we have reached the end. I'll give the floor to Zvonka. Thank you all who have been with us. Thank you, Boštjan. I think there isn't much to be added after everything Boštjan said. Thank you once again. I would like to thank you and Matthias, because you go there where people don't like to go, such as the Tilos Island, and you offer solutions and actually create this big story of green transformation. And thank you for reminding us that we are not gods, but ordinary people. And we have also heard that all the answers lie with human beings, not with the animals, and that we should listen to each other. So let's conclude this EAAL forum from the view who takes a broader perspective. So we have all the NGOs here with a broader perspective, but I think we have learned a lot from Boštjan, and we need to seek answers to the question why something is happening to us. So this event, I think, has been excellent, and everything that has taken place here will be available on the website of this forum. We will appreciate any feedback from you, and will send a letter to all the participants, including a questionnaire to be filled in, so that we get the feedback as regards the preparation of other events about the aging population and the future of work. We talk now about sustainable work, and this has been mentioned at a recent conference organized by the Ministry of Labor. So we have also technical support at all our fora. So another call mentioned by Patricia, so all professionals involved in adult learning are ready, together with all the partners, to move things, to improve things, but this shouldn't only be projects, but this should be our daily effort. Thank you very much. Patricia, maybe you want to say something similar. Thank you from our part. I would like to thank all the speakers for taking your time, and despite the Zoom platform, you have been with us until the end, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Hvala.
Enako, vse dobro.
Hvala, srečno.
Srečno. Hvala tudi za vse prispevke v klepetalnici.
Bravo.